Hello everybody and welcome back to another Hub on Garage. As you're going to notice very quickly, I'm a little bit behind in updating my videos. I do want to apologize. We just got through the holiday season and I was surprised how many people asked about updates on the cars. And well, I have updates. They just have been sitting on my laptop with all the personal things going on. It's just been hard to sit down and focus on doing that. So with that being said, let's hop into this one. I definitely had a scare in this video and it definitely made my plans go a little sideways, but you'll just have to watch it and find out what the scare was. Before I start driving this car all over creation, is taking care of this guy here. So I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell on video, but it's got a lot of flex in it, and well, that's because Datsuns are pretty much made of like 20 gauge steel, and there's not really a whole lot that's actually supporting this to the car. Now, a lot of guys chassis mount their wings, you know, they mount them off the backside of here and whatnot. And I don't know if that actually falls within the rules. Depending on what rules you're looking at, you can only have things sticking off the body of the car so far. I haven't looked recently, but the last time I looked it was 5 inches past any of the bodywork on the car. That includes flares, aero of any kind. So I'm not really sure if these stands would count towards that. I'm going to leave it hatch mounted, and I'm not, a lot of guys that do this, they cut into the hatch and then chassis mount it down inside, but then their hatch is kind of useless. I don't want to do that either. I still, you know, I do have to do maintenance back here, and I do have it where I can still put stuff back there. So I don't want to get rid of the functionality of the rear hatch. So with that being said, I need to reinforce this because that's all that's holding the wing on. And then I want to build some kind of a box that kind of holds on to the inner shell of the hatch. And then when the hatch is closed, somewhere down in here, I want to build a stand. So it's essentially chassis mounted, but not actually chassis mounted. So first things first, I'm going to get the nuts that are on the bolts holding this in place off on here. And I'm going to take a chunk of cardboard and actually use the bolts to punch holes and get a pattern for what this bracket actually looks like on the bottom side. And then from there, I can start fabricating and building some kind of a deal to actually hold this better in place. All right, it has been a day or two, and well, here are my templates. Let me set these down here real quick. So looking at these 3 pieces here, this is actually right underneath the wing, so technically the top piece, and then this piece here sits on the second skin of the hatch. And I've got this little piece that kind of connects the two, so it makes an H pattern. And well, all of that means I got this guy here. Well, technically I have 2 of them. This is what is going to be bolted or sandwiched in between the layers of the hatch and give a nice supportive structure to the wing. And then when I finally get around to it, it will provide a nice solid place for the bracket that goes to the frame rails to actually sit on. And if none of that babble made any sense to you whatsoever, just know that all of that work means that this is in place right here. And yes, the welds look far worse than what they actually are, but I got it on both sides. And let's just say that wing is way more secure. Like, it's pretty solid, especially considering the height of the wing stands and the thickness of material that I had available that I used when I made those. Now, I didn't quite think everything through when it came to technically chassis mounting the wing, because there is a bracket that I need to put from the bracket that's on the hatch to the frame rail that's down there, but without removing the seats that I just put back into the car or removing the rear hatch glass, I don't actually have enough room to get everything mocked up. The seal is bad on the rear hatch window, and it does need to be replaced. So I think when that window gets removed for the seal to be replaced, that is when I will build the bracket that goes from the bottom of the hatch to the frame rails in the backside of the car. If you had a keen eye and you noticed what my templates were sitting on, the box that it was sitting on, then you know the type of harness that I decided to go with in the Datsun, at least for the moment. And that is Race Quip. Now, I ended up going with a Race Quip 5-point harness. Technically, this isn't DOT approved, but it has the same exact mounting points as the 4-point DOT approved harness that I was looking at. So if I get pulled over at some point and they make a fuss about it, what I'll do is I'll take the 5-point, switch it over to the passenger side, and then put the 4-point in here. That way I have one of each harness. Part of me really just doesn't like the idea of having the 4-point harness. That 5th strap, making it so I don't go whoop in case I ever get in an accident, just it makes me feel more secure having that strap there than not having it. I know that the 4-point is designed so that that doesn't happen, but for my peace of mind, at least for the moment, we're going to run this and see how it goes. Okay, so the last road safety thing that I needed to focus on was getting a horn, and well, like 10-15 bucks on Amazon, and I got me a horn, and it's actually not too bad. I'm pleasantly surprised with the volume that it has, and because it came with a little bracket, I just bolted it onto the radiator support. Now, mechanically, the one thing that I had to focus on, at least at the moment that I know about, was I had a fuel leak, and it ended up being a combination of 2 separate things. So this regulator, I've had this regulator for a long time, and it goes anywhere from 3 psi to 65 psi with a change of spring, and that's it on the inside. Before I wasn't getting enough fuel pressure, so I switched out the spring and got the correct fuel pressure, but that showed 2 other problems. One was I had a fuel leak at this fitting, and so I replaced it. Technically, I flipped the one that was on the rail to this side and then put a 45 to lessen the stress on that line. And then inside here, there's a diaphragm. And I guess because it's as old as it is, the diaphragm started to crack, and it was actually leaking into this vacuum port that was connected to my ECU. During the last video, I actually was dealing with some map problems, which deals with the vacuum, and the map sensor has a 2-bar, there's a 2-bar map sensor built into the ECU, so when I pulled the vacuum line, I have fuel in the vacuum line, and I was like, how the heck did it get here? And I thought it may be because of the fuel leak that was coming from the fuel line. Come to find out, is because the diaphragm was leaking fuel into the vacuum lines. That is all the problems that I was having that I needed to take care of before I could actually drive this car. I am missing a few little things. The hood's not mounted, and the front turn signals aren't mounted, but I do have the rear turn signals. So I am going to get the laptop set up, figure out if I can do some kind of a video, and then I think I may be at the point of starting the car and actually putting it in gear and see if it moves under its own power, because I haven't done that yet, because the transmission wasn't filled when I did my first start. Hey, pulled out of the driveway under its own power. We're making progress. Before I drive it any further, the car is absolutely filthy from sitting for 5 years. I don't know if you can tell, but there is actually still, I wrote Dotson in the rear window in the dust 5 years ago, and it's still there. Plus all the additional dust from everywhere. So I am going to get this thing cleaned up and then maybe actually take it on the road. Alright, so I found out a lot of things during my test drives. The first time I drove around 2 blocks, and halfway through it my car started acting really weird, and I think it was because I didn't have enough fuel in the tank. With the temporary setup that I have inside the fuel cell bladder, because that whole thing has to be replaced, I only have one pickup in one corner, and so if there's not enough fuel in it, it can slosh away from the pickup in the tank really easy, and I think that's what was causing my problem, because the car got really lean according to the AFRs, which wasn't actually while it was running. Anyways, that was the first time. Super scared. The second drive after I figured out that it was low on fuel was I put a couple gallons in, and then I actually drove it to the nearest gas station, and the idle got stuck at 2,000 RPMs. I don't know why it decided to get stuck there. I didn't change anything between, so I think it's just that the engine got enough heat into it that the fuel versus the throttle blade position just made it idle higher. So I readjusted that. Scared the heck out of me. I had no idea what was going on, but I got that readjusted and it ran just fine. That brings me to where we're at right now, and that is, so let me explain what is going on here. So I was pulling it up through my driveway and up to the garage because it had like 2 or 3 miles on it, which is enough time for the break-in, lubrication, and whatnot to be good with the engine. So I needed to do a proper oil change because I just put regular conventional 530 into this instead of zinc additive VR1 that I normally run, that you need to run on a flat tappet camshaft motor. And for the short amount of time that it was run, it shouldn't have had any issues. So I went to go drain the oil. I have this guy right here, and I figured it'd be a good opportunity to catch some of the oil in the top of it to just see and make sure there's nothing floating around in the oil that's not supposed to be, because, well, the last time this engine ran was 5 years ago. The last time it was tore apart was 4 years ago. So it's been a long time. So I figured I would just kind of glance at the oil, see what was going on. And I don't know if I didn't clean off the top of that enough or whatnot, but I caught some of the oil. I ran a magnet through it. I got some particles. And then I looked at the oil as it was coming out into the pan and noticed sparkles. Well, if you know anything about engines, then you know that sparkles in oil typically means bearing, metal on metal, something really bad. And well, I freaked out. So I cut the filter apart, which is over here. And looking into it, you know, I kind of had to, I used a Sawzall on this, so I had to kind of figure out what part of the oil filter to look at. but I tore apart all the filter elements on it, and I really didn't see a lot of material in it. Maybe a little minor stuff, but that's gonna be a thing with brand new engines. There's gonna be a little bit of wear. It's just normal. So I laid everything out. I've got everything numbered here. This is the whole top end. Part of it's sitting over there, but you know, to make sure that everything stayed where it's supposed to and everything stayed matched with where it went into the engine. I did pull the lifters, and that kind of brings us to where we're at right now. I also had a slight tick when I brought the car up to the garage, which could just be a minor valve lash adjustment, which is normal in these motors needing to do that after they get warm. But with the combination of the glitter and the tick, I swore that I wiped a cam. If you are familiar with old school small block V8s, or actually any old school V8, then you'll know that they had flat tappet cams, and essentially it is a flat surface running on a flat surface. If you look at like modern technology, you'll see that these are on roller bearings and they got these roller tips. Well, your standard lifter now has this. If you look at any LS, they're all roller lifters. In old school engines, they don't have it. It's just a flat surface on a flat surface. And it's common that if you don't use the right additives, especially with newer oil, those two flat surfaces that are riding on each other can wipe each other out, and you can flat spot or wipe out a cam even on startup. And I swore that's what I had going on with this engine, but that's not the case. All the lifters look good. I looked down into the lifter bores to kind of see what was going on with the cam without completely tearing the engine apart, and there's no problems that I saw there. And then I remembered one thing as I was sitting here staring at my motor. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to tell, but if you see like this little goop stuff right here, that is engine assembly lube. And I went and grabbed it off the shelf because, well, I still happen to have the same tube that I used when I reassembled everything. And you squeeze it out, and I noticed something. See how it says Moly Graphite on it? Well, graphite has a metallic-y look to it, and I may have just pulled this engine apart for absolutely no reason. Not entirely sure. We're at a point where I'm going to slap all the components back onto this engine. I'm not going to video any of it, but I will get it all back together, and then I will be doing proper oil change with VR1 and a new filter, and I'm going to let it run for probably 5 minutes in the garage. I'm going to listen, make sure that there's no noises, and then I will be draining the oil in the filter and double checking to see if there's actually any material in there. And now that I've done the original oil change, most of the assembly lube should be out of it, but we'll see if there's any actual metal particles in there. I will also get a magnetic drain plug to try and see, as another level of precaution, to see if I can find any metal particles. And with this giant scare, there's going to be one more thing that I'm going to do. It's not going to be right this second because I have to order the parts, but I am going to get a sensor kind of like what I have for my fuel pressure. Now that I figured out how to program the fuel pressure into my ECU to keep track of, I'm going to do the same kind of sensor for my oil pressure, because this is gauged oil pressure, but it is on those gauges over there. And, well, it's kind of hard to pay attention to driving, listen to all the noises going on, and make sure that all these gauges are reading correctly. So that's going to be a future upgrade, just in case if something does happen, it's in a log that I can see and figure out exactly what's going on with all of it. But anyways, I'm I'm going to get to work putting this back together, and when we go to start it up, I'll check back in. Well, she's back together, so making sure to set up. I already used the oil pump prime tool. I made sure that I had plenty of oil pressure, so that definitely tells me that it's not an oil pump failure problem. So yeah, we'll set you up and we'll just see what happens, see if it makes any noise. I'm gonna let it run for a few minutes and then literally drain out the oil again and check it. Let the vehicle run. I got the car jacked up and drained out the oil, and while I was underneath the car, noticed one very annoying thing. And you have to understand that this car is pretty much solid mounted. There's about that much rubber as the engine mount. Past that, it's solid mounted to the car, which causes a lot of vibration, especially with the cam that's in it. And somehow the part of the exhaust manifold bolts had backed off, and where the exhaust connects to the header, there was only 2 bolts holding it on, so a giant exhaust leak, which super annoying. Maybe that was the noise from before. I don't know, but that is fixed, hopefully. I'm still waiting on the oil to come in the mail to refill this, as well as I'm waiting on a oil filter cutter tool. If you look over here, when I did the oil change, I made sure not to use my normal oil change container that sees all the dirt, debris, and just general junk from doing fabrication work. That makes sure that there's no random metal flakes from outside sources in this oil change, as well as I can kind of see it better through here. But the other reason I did this is because then I could use a magnet. I ended up using 2 different magnets. This magnet went into the oil, and I kind of did this number floating around to see if I could pick up anything, and I didn't really pick up anything there. And then I took this magnet on the underside of this and went across, and I didn't find any shavings in this oil. No particles, nothing. So this right here shows a nice clean bill of health, but it's not until I get the oil filter cutter tool and pop this off, making it look kind of like this, and checking the filter element inside of here to make sure that it's 100% nothing to do with the engine, and that glittery substance that I saw coming out of the oil when I drained it originally was nothing more than the break-in lube that I had put in this engine 4 years ago. Alright, I'm sorry that the fan is on, but it is extremely hot outside. It's like 100 degrees with a really high humidity point, so unfortunately I have to have the fan on. But as an update, this guy came in, which if you've never seen one of these before, this is an oil filter cutter tool. Essentially, it just sits on top of the oil filter, and then it's kind of like a can opener. You spin it, and it eventually cuts through the oil filter, and then you can disassemble it so it looks something like this. So this chunk came off. That's how much it cut off. And then because I bought a heavier duty oil filter than the last one, This one had like metal holding it together and whatnot. Pretty good construction if you're looking for an oil filter. It took me a while to get that all cut apart, but then I have the filter element, and I looked front and back, and there really is no metal in this oil filter whatsoever. So I think I'm going to give my engine a clean bill of health. I'm still got to wait for the oil. Ordered them. They're supposed to show up the same day that the filter cutter came, and for whatever reason they're two different delivery times. Don't know what that's about, but as soon as I get the oil, we're going to put oil in the car and we're going to start it up and go for a drive. Alright, I think I'm going to end this one here. I am happy to say that the Datsun runs and drives under its own power. The current tune in it definitely needs some adjusting, so over the next few days I'm going to focus on the drivability of the Datsun in Tuner Studio. They give you, between the data logger and looking over that and the tools within Tuner Studio, it makes it really easy that as long as you are careful, you can do a relatively decent amount of tuning on the street with this car, or you can take data logs, and the Megalog viewer allows you to adjust the tune as you're looking at the logs, making it relatively easy to get this relatively dialed in. I know I said a lot of relatively, so the next few days I'm going to drive the car, try and dial that in as much as I can before I take off on a small vacation. When I get back from that, the next video will be taking care of some small issues that are definitely present with the Datsun, because there are a couple of shows that I want to go to, and I want to drive the Datsun to them. I don't want to trailer it, just because I now know it can run and drive. So until the next video, thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. Goodbye.
I'll do what it takes, I ain't making mistakes like that. I'll put it on your face to make you go take